What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tsla, Nvda, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm going to break down what's happening to the market so far as we're seeing some more buyers trying to step in. Just know that I am not a financial planner, so take nothing I'm saying as financial advice. Anyways, as far as the market's going, we're seeing some buyers stepping in. As you can see, SPY had a low down here. We actually pushed and we're trying to make a higher low. The same thing's been happening on the QQQ. So as long as these lows hold, we should attempt to continue to push. But whether or not that happens depends on some factors, such as what happens with President Trump's tariffs, what's going on with the economic calendar. That's why I want to prioritize talking about that first, and I'll break down these charts for you guys. So I want to remind you all that on Wednesday, President Trump announced that he wanted to pause the majority of his reciprocal tariffs for 90 days on most of these countries, except for China, because of the way in which tensions began to rise. Because of that news about how the majority of tariffs were going to be paused for 90 days, the market bounced together on Wednesday. We had a very, very nice green day. Then on Thursday, the market came red together. Almost every stock was in the red. The market cooled off a bit after such a bullish day. And then on Friday, which was the last trading day we had, the whole market came up together again. So as you guys can see, the market was in unison. The reason for this is because the market is running on a very similar algorithm that's reacting to these tariffs. The tariffs are affecting stocks very similarly. And you guys could see how it has a ripple effect on all these different stocks, especially on the small caps. So when big tech are running together, you're going to see small caps kind of like follow that trend. It also affects our ETFs, and the market's moving in unison. So you want to remember that, especially as time goes on. I say that because we have some big news that just came out. President Trump has exempted phones, computers, chips, and other products from new tariffs, which is huge news. He just made this announcement, I believe it was yesterday morning. So that's huge, huge, huge news. So President Trump is going to be exempting smartphones, computers, and other tech devices and components for them from his reciprocal tariffs. New guidance is coming from the U.S. Customs and Border Protection. This is big news because President Trump said that with the 145% tariffs on products from China, that threatened to take a toll on tech giants such as like Apple and others like that, which makes iPhones and most of their products in China. So President Trump mentioned he wants to give these companies some time to transition to their manufacturing in the USA. The White House also said that the exemptions were made because not only does it give them time, it also gives them a bigger edge at kind of like planning everything out. And then on top of this, the guidance is going to be excluding other electronic devices, such as semiconductors, solar cells, flat panel TV displays, flash drives, and memory cards. So it's very, very big news. There's also a statement that came out. President Trump mentioned, and this is what they claim he said, that it's been very clear that America cannot rely on China to manufacture critical technologies such as semiconductors, chips, smartphones, and laptops. That is very, very big. And then on top of this, they're basically doing what's necessary to get manufacturing to the US as soon as possible. So that is some big news that's come out, at least so far. The White House is listening to the situation and they're trying to once again alleviate some pain, at least for the time being. So that's some huge news. I also have a couple of quotes from President Trump, but basically, I just want to say that I didn't hear too much from him over the weekend. I think we'll hear more from him either later on today, if not tomorrow. President Trump also said that the U.S. is publishing tariff exclusions for specific products. U.S. tariff exclusions apply to computers, smartphones, and other products. They're going to apply to chip making equipment, and then tariff exclusions apply to reciprocal tariffs. And he's doing something that no other president has done before. He said that the tariffs are going to be great for the country, but for now, he's going to continue to delay them. So he's implying that this is going to be more of a delay, not really like a straight up pause forever, just a delay, a temporary move for now. I also heard President Trump saying, actually, before I say that, I just want to mention that we had Howard Lutnick say that the tariffs on smartphones, computers, and electronic devices will still come back in a couple of months. This exemption is just temporary. That's what they're saying. It's just a temporary exemption. Obviously, the market's going to like this because it's going to be very positive news for Apple and semiconductors. So this should help the market push to some extent, but even if that happens, keep in mind that President Trump still plans on imposing the tariffs again later on. He did imply that yesterday. So they're going to come back, at least in another couple of months. This is just a temporary exemption. Now, this is the kind of confusing part, okay? So President Trump was also speaking about China. Basically, what happened is China slapped a 125% retaliatory tariff on the U.S. after the U.S. raised tariffs on China to 145%. Now, that's some big news because President Trump has mentioned he was not happy with their retaliation. But for the last couple of days, especially on Friday, President Trump was saying that he's very confident that there's going to be a deal between the US and China. He said that when asked about this, President Trump said that the US has a great relationship with Chinese Xi. He's willing to speak with him directly, and then there was many questions that were pretty much asked about this. President Trump essentially was saying that he's going to be gracious, especially if China makes a good deal with the U.S. But as of right now, if they continue to retaliate, it's not going to be good for them. And he actually went on about that, about how he's very confident, very optimistic that a deal is going to be coming soon. So President Trump was talking about that before. But what's confusing is that this morning, some news came out from trade representatives that claim that President Trump said that he's not going to be speaking to President Xi. So it's a bit of an opposite move right here. I think that so far they're saying there's no plans for them to speak at the moment. There are tensions that are continuing to rise, so it's not the best of news. But I haven't heard much from President Trump saying this. This is just according to trade advisors who claim that they're not really planning to see the two of them speaking. And the last time President Trump spoke, he actually mentioned that he has great respect for China and that he wants there to be a deal. So President Trump is saying that he wants there to be a deal. He's optimistic it's going to come and this and that. But the trade representatives are saying that President Trump claims that he is not going to speak directly to Xi. So it's kind of going back and forth. Even if he doesn't speak to Xi, I mean, a deal could still come. You know, they could speak to other constituents. But I'm just trying to say, guys, that this is what's like going on so far. A little bit of confusion with the relationship between the U.S. and China. But despite that, I don't think it's like that major news compared to the temporary exemption we got. So I'm saying that this news right here about how the exemptions that's coming to like iPhones, computers, and chips will kind of trump all that news about China, at least for the time being. So the market should still try to push anyways, despite all this confusing news about China. So we should still be fine nonetheless. Anyways, enough about all of that. I just want to say that tomorrow is going to be Monday, April 14th, 2025. At 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the consumer inflationary expectations. Then we have the 3 and 6 month bill auctions coming out at 11:30 a.m. Then we have a bunch of Fed speakers tomorrow from Barkin, Waller, Harker, and Bostic. So keep that in mind. Besides that, going into Monday, we have Goldman Sachs announcing their earnings alongside First Bank. On Tuesday, we have Bank of America, Citi, Johnson Johnson, and PNC, and a couple more like United Airlines. And then the market's still extremely fearful, but I do think some of the fear could subside if the market tries to rally a bit. Momentum is at extreme fear, but it is starting to become less fearful as we're seeing the market trying to bounce. The put to call option ratio is dipping a bit, which is a good sign because we're seeing less puts being bought and a little bit more calls. And volatility is once again decreasing. We're seeing a little bit less fear as the VIX is beginning to decrease in value, at least to some extent. Besides that, I didn't see anything else that's big on the news, but I just want to make it very clear that right now the market's looking quite decent. And we are still favoring the upwards direction. The first thing is that we're actually making this higher low right here. And then we're going to be watching these key levels. So let's go over what's going to likely happen. So let's just say, hypothetically, there's bad news. Let's just say you want to be a bear. If you want to be a bear, first off, you want to see SPY lose 524.68. If we lose that support, we're going to be at risk of returning closer to the lows again. If we lose 524, I'm looking for essentially the 520 area. If that fails us, yes, we could be starting to dip right back down towards these lows. So watch 524 and 520 basically as two supports if you are a bear. If you're a bull, you want to see SPY basically continue to ride this blue trend line up, fill this gap up here around the 545 area and just continue to hold and eventually start pushing for that gap fill for 555. That's like the more bullish case, getting back up to 555. And then if that breaks, we actually have like 565 as our next potential target. What is more probable in my personal opinion? Well, when you look at the daily time frame, okay, you'll see that we're nearing a bullish cross in the PPO. We got a nice day on Friday, and we're actually going to look like we want to test 545 very soon. I do think there's a good chance we test this 20 EMA. And if we break this, I think we easily fill the gap for basically 555. We have a big gap to fill up here. So the daily is looking a bit more promising, especially thanks to all this news with the tariff exemptions for many of these products. If you're looking at like phones, computers, and chips, that's very good news. So my suspicion is that the bearish case is not going to pan out. I think the bullish case looks more probable. Going into tomorrow, there's a very good chance that we see SPY either gap or try to push back up for that 545 area. If we could break that, I'm looking for that gap fill for 555 very, very soon. And then maybe even 565 could be coming next. We need confirmation, though, so long as we don't end up losing 524 and 520. We're looking more bullish. I'm favoring upside, so watch to see if we break 534. If we break that resistance, I'm looking for a continuation higher for the 540s. I think the odds do favor upside with this cup and handle like structure. On top of this is also like a double bottom, and if you take a fib retracement like this, you'll see that we're also bouncing very nicely off our 0.618 fib level, which is very, 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 very good so far. So a nice balance right over here off a key level, and that's a nice confluence of support, which makes me a bit more bullish. So I do lean a bit more in favor of bulls to fill this gap up here around 545 and eventually push back up for 555 to fill the gap. We have a nice double bottom here making higher lows, so I do favor upside, so we're doing a good job. For the QQQ, we have a very similar setup. We have a double bottom here making higher lows as well. If we end up losing essentially this like 440 area, we could be dumping back down towards the 433 area back down here. So watch and see if 440 holds at the very least, especially 444. So 444 to 440 has to hold for us to remain bullish. If you're a bear, you want to see us lose 444. If that fails us, we're going to be dipping back down towards this low over here. So be very careful if we lose 444, if not 440. That's going to cause us to start dumping. However, with this double bottom right here, we have a nice double bottom, and we're actually attempting to make higher lows here, which is a very, very good sign. So notice this gap right here to fill on the 4-hour on the QQQ. Because we actually gapped down on Thursday, we have a gap to fill from the pre-market. So that makes me suspect we're going to be going for that 466 gap fill. If that breaks, we're going to be pushing for like 478 next. That's the more bullish case, okay? And I think that this possibility is looking more probable. There's a very, very good chance we do try to fill that gap for 466 soon, and then we eventually push for the 470s, because I think tech is going to try to push with all this news coming up that's more positive. Yes, there's some confusion with China, but I still think this news should trump everything. This news should be more important, and I think this could actually help the market more. So I do anticipate more upside. For the IWM Russell 2000, as of right now, we have a bullish divergence. Now, if you're a bear, you want to see us essentially lose 178. If that fails us, we're looking for a dip back down towards this imbalance, taking us down to like 175 and 172. 172 is going to be our target if we end up getting a rejection, so watch that very closely. But the chart does not seem to favor that, because when you look at this chart, this looks like a nice left shoulder, a head, then a right shoulder. And we're actually trying to push hard towards our 50 EMA around 188. If we break that, then I do expect this to continue to the trend line around 194. So that's what we're essentially looking for. So from how I see things, it looks like we had a low established around 169. We bounced. We're making higher lows right here, which is a good sign. So this chart's favoring. It wants to push for at least 188, if not the low 190s heading into tomorrow. So there's a good chance we try to continue. For ES, we have a very similar setup. We have a double bottom divergence right here. So what's happening is we have this double bottom, and then we're also trying to make a higher low right here. So that's a good sign. If this continues, we're looking for an attempt to get up to about 5,500. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 5,625 as our potential target. Now, if you're a bear, let's just say we get bad news out of nowhere. Sometimes it could happen, right? If we get bad news, you want to see us essentially lose 52.50. If we lose that, I think we dip for 51.50. And if that fails us, this is going to dump, by the way. So make sure you watch those two supports just to be safe. You just want to know where the supports happen to be. But I don't think that's going to happen. I'm just giving you guys the possibility. What's going to likely happen is this. I think that this is once again a double bottom on ES. We're holding our blue trend line. We're going to slowly curl up for this 5,500 target and eventually start pushing for 56.25, which is where this 200 EMA happens to be. So I favor the upside a little bit more. For NQ, we have a double bottom here. If we end up losing basically 18,250, we're looking for a dump back down towards 17,800. But with this double bottom, we're looking pretty good. As long as we ride this up, we're going to try to continue to push towards this 19,250 area. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 19,600 as we look a bit more bullish. For Bitcoin, we got a little rejection. We have this tough resistance. I do think that this might retest 82,250. It might dip a little bit, but then we're going to be looking to see if we get a bounce right here to try to get back up towards this these highs up here around the 88,000 area, because we have an inverse head and shoulder setup. So it has some potential as of right now. For Tesla, okay, just ignore these lines. Let me just close them. The pattern is very simple. It's an inverse head and shoulders as well. If we end up losing 240, I will turn a little bit more bearish. We're going to be looking for a move back down towards 229. But as long as we're above 252, we're looking for an attempt to push for 263. Then eventually this gap fill back up to about 268. So in my opinion, it looks like we have a left shoulder here, double bottom making up our head. Then we could be forming like a right shoulder. So we have this like consolidation here. Break past 255-ish tomorrow. I'm going to be looking for 256 as our target. As long as we don't lose 240, we're going to be fine. So I hope we get that bounce. Obviously, there's other factors affecting Tesla, such as its own news, but the setup looks a little bit more bullish, favoring like 255 and then eventually 265 as our potential targets. So hopefully we do see a bit of a bounce with the overall market as it tries to push. I do think there's a good chance for that. For Nvda, okay, if Nvidia loses 103, we're looking for a dump back down to 99.73. And as long as we're above our supports around 110, we're looking for an attempt to push for 115 and eventually 117. So from how I see things, inverse head and shoulders setup, it's very, very clean looking. Left shoulder, head and right shoulder. I don't want to see Nvidia lose the support right here around this 105 area. If we lose that tomorrow, it's going to be a bad sign. We could be dipping back down for 98 down here. So what's more probable is that we have a left shoulder, the head, and then we're just slowly trying to ride this up for the right shoulder. And then we just slowly uptrend for basically 115 to 117 is our target. If that breaks, we continue to go up for 120. So I do think Nvidia looks a bit more bullish in my personal opinion. For others out there, we also have Apple. Apple's looking quite promising as well. Nice looking inverse head and shoulder setup. With the bullish news with these exemptions, this is going to be bullish news for Nvidia and Apple, with chips, computers, and phones being involved. So I think that Apple's going to try to push with this news. That's my bias. So just in case we get a dump, let's just say the unexpected happens. If you want to be a bear, you want to see us lose like 188. If we lose that, then yes, this will be dipping back down, which I don't think is very likely. I think what's more probable is that this is like a left shoulder, this is our head, and this is a right shoulder. And we're going to try to break 199.5. If we break that tomorrow, if we get back above 199.5, I'm expecting us to push towards 208. This is my target right here. See this level right here? I know it's a little hard to see. So basically, it's very simple. We have this previous support becoming resistance around 209. I think we're going to retest that. And if that breaks, we push for basically 220. So I think that we're going to try to push above 200. If that breaks, we're looking for 209, then eventually 220. We look a bit more bullish. That's more probable in my personal opinion. Netflix is also forming an inverse head and shoulders here, but we need confirmation. If we lose 900, we could dip back down towards the 880s. If we break past 934, we're looking for an attempt to push back up to 956 and eventually 970. So I think there's an inverse head and shoulders here. We have some potential to push for 934 plus. For MSTR, MicroStrategy has a left shoulder, head, and right shoulder. If we hypothetically lose, okay, this 280 area, we could turn back down. I don't think that's going to happen. I think we dip a little bit to retest like 290 before it tries to bounce back up, and we could be looking for an attempt to get back into like the 320s like this. That looks a bit more probable so long as we don't end up losing 280. We're looking like we have potential. For Celsius, we're on a very, very nice uptrend. So as long as we don't end up losing like 36 and basically 35, I think this is favoring 38 as a potential target or above. For Supermicro, we're looking pretty good here. We have a left shoulder, a head, and then a right shoulder. But the only problem is that this is starting to dip a little bit. I think we had some bad news. So it's getting very, very tight. I would argue that maybe we could kind of redraw this wedge and just kind of like extend this a little bit more. We're in this like wedge still, right? And the thing about this is that this might dip a little bit towards like 32, but I need to see it hold 30. As long as we hold 30, we have the potential to push back up for basically 37. But we got to hold 30. We need to hold that 30 area. Look for a small dip towards 32.5. We'll see if we break out higher. It's not looking that great to me, but I'm a little bit optimistic thanks to this chip news. So hopefully it tries to bounce. I need to see it hold 30 at the very least. As long as that holds, I'm looking for a bounce for 38. For Palantir, inverse head and shoulder setup, I don't want to see us lose 84. If that fails us, we're going to be dumping. As long as we're above 84, we're favoring a pushback up for 96, so just keep that in mind. For Rivian, we have the same thing going on. We have a double bottom here. I want to see us get back above 11.5. If that breaks, we're looking for an attempt for 12. If we end up losing 11 flat, we're looking for a dip here, but I think we have like a triple bottom. We're looking for an attempt to get back up towards 11.58. So SoFi is looking pretty good here. We also have a double bottom here. If we break past 10.92, we're looking for an attempt to push towards 11.6. If we end up losing 10 flat, we're looking for a dip back down towards 9. So SoFi, we do have a lot of these. Sorry, I have it right over here. Sorry about that, guys. We have a bunch of big bank earnings tomorrow, like Goldman Sachs, and we have like First Bank in those. That could also affect SoFi. I want to see us get back above 10.92 if we do break that. We're looking for a push, but we'll see what happens with the big bank earnings as well. For AMD, it's making higher lows here. The semiconductor news could be good for them, so that could actually help them to some extent with the tariffs being delayed. So we're looking for essentially 96.75, then eventually the 100 plus area as our target. Do think it's going to retest 100. We'll see if it rejects or not, so it has potential. ARM as well, we had some good news. This could be trying to get back up towards the highest around 107, then eventually 110. Coinbase is looking pretty good here. Inverse head and shoulders setup. So long as we don't end up losing 163, we're looking for an attempt to go higher for essentially 181. If that breaks, I think we're going to be looking for 190 plus. So I see some potential in this. For Amazon, we have an inverse head and shoulders. As long as we're above 184, we're looking for an attempt to push for 190 plus. If we end up losing 178, we're looking for a dump back down to about 170 flat. But this is actually favoring upside for the 190, so just keep that in mind. For Meta, it looks decent. However, I need to see Meta get back above 554 for confirmation. Will it push with tech tomorrow? It might, but I need to see 554 break for it to push back up towards 580. If we end up losing 524, we could dip back down, but I'm looking for an attempt to get back above 554. For Microsoft, I want to see it get back above 391. I do think we test that tomorrow, but we got to break that for confirmation. If that breaks, we're going back up to 400. If it loses 376, we dip back down, but this is looking a bit more bullish with the inverse head and shoulders setup, so I do think we favor 392. I need to see that test tomorrow. If we break that, we're going to go higher. We'll see, but so far it has potential nonetheless. Google looks a bit more bullish. I just don't want to see us lose 155. If 155 fills us, we're going to be dipping back down towards 147. As long as we're above 155, we're favoring a test of 163.8. This is where this imbalance is. Eventually, the 170s are coming, so it looks a bit more bullish on this setup. GameStop, for those who are still interested, looks bullish. It might be trying to push for 27.5 next. AMC is going to be testing 3. We'll see if it breaks. If it does, we're looking for 3.1. DJT is trying to bounce a little bit. It's kind of consolidating, but I think we might be retesting 20, and we'll see how it reacts to that. The VIX got a big rejection here. We're looking for basically 34.8 as our support. If that fails us, we could be dipping back down towards the 27.5 area and also this gap down here. So look for a test of 34.85 tomorrow, and we'll see if we hold it or not. So keep that in mind. The 10-year, it's pushing a bit, but overall it's kind of like in a range. So we'll see how this is affected by the tariffs coming out in the future. The dollar is also looking bearish, which is technically a bullish sign for the markets. So far, the bulls have a bigger edge. So as you guys know, I can't make promises. I can't promise you President Trump will say this. I can't promise you anything about the tariffs, but I can tell you this. As of right now, the news is more bullish. We got a very, very bullish piece of news with many of the tariffs being exempted. Many products being exempted from tariffs, excuse me, guys, when it comes to like electronic devices and such. So very, very good news. This should help the market, in my opinion. So we'll see, just to be safe. So make sure you watch your levels just to be safe. And overall, I do favor upside looking at the setups. So the bulls have a bigger edge, in my opinion. I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a good rest of your day. And I'll be back tomorrow before market open for another update. Until then, have a good one and peace out.